Lawyers for the Attorney General contend it was perfectly legal for Parliament to repeal Section 34 with the Piarco corruption cases in mind. As arguments continue today in the constitutionality challenge brought to the High Court by some of the Piarco defendants, the Attorney General's counsel says the legislature did not overreach into the judiciary when it struck Section 34 off the statute books.
Over the last 2 days, attorneys for Steve Ferguson and other claimants in this case have repeatedly said that the repeal legislation was unlawful and unjust because it was triggered specifically by the Piarco corruption case. Today, the lawyer representing the Attorney General said that argument just doesn't hold water in the courtroom. The most senior of the British barristers in the courtroom, Lord David Pannick, took aim at his colleague's claim, saying, quote, "It is legally irrelevant because legislatures frequently and properly enact legislation in general terms because of a mischief exposed by circumstances of a particular individual, group or case," end quote. Another key contention of the claimants is that they had already applied to the court for a discharge under Section 34 by the time it was repealed. But Lord Pannick said lawmakers often pass statutes that affect ongoing legal proceedings, adding, quote, "As long as the legislation doesn't tell the court who is guilty and who is innocent, retrospective law is consistent with the separation of powers principle," end quote. He went on to point out what he called an irony in the claimant's case, saying, quote, "They cannot have it both ways. They cannot say at the same time that it is a breach of constitutional power for Parliament to intervene in existing criminal procedures, and for them to say they want to rely on the provisions guaranteed by Section 34, which in itself is an intervention in existing criminal proceedings," end quote. The court also heard from one senior counsel who questioned the propriety of correspondence between the AG and the DPP in the days leading up to the repeal of Section 34. She says some of the statements made by the DPP are tantamount to an interference in the course of justice. Senior counsel Sophia Choate, who represents businessman Amir Idu, waded into DPP Roger Gaspard for recommending that the AG use repeal legislation with retroactive effect to quash Section 34. She told Justice Meridina Moro that the DPP abused his authority, saying, quote, "He acted ultra-vires or out of bounds, suggesting that the Attorney General changed the law to deprive defendants of an acquittal in a matter where he was party to the proceedings," end quote. The matter continues tomorrow with Lord Pannick advancing his defense of the state. Fane Richards,